And John, it was a wild scene inside the courthouse, a scene of a different sort, of course. The prosecutors are expected to wrap up their case today in the murder trial of Drew Peterson after some explosive testimony describing how the former Illinois police officer allegedly coached his fourth wife to lie to police for him. Now, Reverend Neil Shorey testified that Stacey Peterson told him that Drew Peterson admitted he killed his third wife, Kathleen Savio, and coached her for hours on how to lie and cover up for him. Now, of course, Stacey went missing several years ago, and Peterson is the prime suspect in her disappearance. There is no physical evidence tying Drew Peterson to the murder of his third wife, Kathleen Savio, whose body was found in a dry bathtub in her home. Police originally classified her death as a drowning. Okay, let's bring in our legal panel right now. Joining me, Chip Merlin, he's criminal defense attorney, and we have Donald Schweitzer. Is a former police officer and a former prosecutor. Sorry for murdering your name. Well, pardon that pun. Pardon me for messing up your name, Donald. Good to see both of you. And I say wild because apparently yesterday in the courtroom, the jury, they sort of like had a loud outburst, a gasp, if you will, to some of the testimony they heard. So we're talking about the pastor testifying that basically wife number 4 was told to cover up for the killing, the alleged killing of wife number 3. Donald, I'll start with you. Is this the linchpin in this case?
It may or may not. I think that what we have to understand is that the jury is going to be given an instruction to take this testimony with a lot of caution because the person who made this statement wasn't cross-examined. But hearsay evidence is very powerful and it's very dangerous, and that's why we have rules of hearsay. I've seen in many cases where this type of evidence comes in and it completely influences a jury to render a verdict. So I think it's very dangerous testimony against Drew Peterson.
So if it's dangerous, Chip, how does the defense poke a hole in that testimony?
Well, they didn't do it yesterday, at least from the reports that I saw. As a matter of fact, the cross-examination seemed to fail, completely, other than taking a couple pot shots that the Reverend had some other individual close by because of his concern that Stacey Peterson was a married woman and he didn't want to be seen doing anything wrong. But other than that, this is very damaging testimony and will probably prevent the defense from getting a directed verdict. I think they were hoping, because there was no physical evidence, that they had a chance to get a directed verdict. But this is damaging testimony. Make no mistake about it.
Let me read some more. Go ahead, Donald.
I would agree with Chip that the cross-examination of this witness was really bad. Asking the pastor or the Reverend whether or not Stacey was trying to seduce him. It's just the line of questioning that shows that you're grasping for straws.
Well, the reason why they said that, Donald, just to put it in context, they said that because Stacey Peterson had the pastor meet him at a Starbucks in town, which is where she allegedly told him all of this, the account of what happened. And
so that means that there's an affair, or that she's trying to seduce him?
Absolutely not. I'm not saying that. I'm just simply saying that that's why the defense was saying that. I would put those two people together alone. That's all I'm telling you. But let me continue, though, with some testimony from yesterday in that same conversation that took place at that Starbucks in town, where the pastor said yesterday that Stacey Peterson, this is what she told him, that she woke up in the middle of that night. She couldn't find Drew. She couldn't find him on his phone. She went downstairs and she saw Drew Peterson dressed in black, emptying a bag of women's clothing in their washing machine. Then Stacey said that Drew put his own clothes in the machine. There's some of the testimony that was the jurors are not hearing because it's considered marital privilege, is a conversation between a husband and a wife. But the jury certainly hearing that testimony yesterday. So, Chip, I go back to you. How do you think the jurors will process that testimony?
Well, I don't think they're going to process it very well in favor of Drew Peterson. There's very unusual circumstances about the death. And then all of a sudden, at the very end of the prosecution's case, they hammer this point with the Reverend coming through and testimony from Stacey, which is interesting because the jury's not being told that Stacey has disappeared. So this is a very unusual case, but the prosecution's coming through very strong. And the big question, I think, now is whether or not Drew Peterson, because of this testimony, may take the stand in his own defense.
Donald, final word. Is that going to happen? Will Drew Peterson take the stand?
He'd be crazy to do so. This is a razor-thin case. It's about as good as it could get for him. If he does it, he may give the prosecution what they need, is a lucky break. They need some kind of a mistake to be made by the defense, and the stupidest thing they could do is put that guy on the stand.
We'll keep watching. Donald Schweitzer and Chip Merlin, thank you very much. Good to see both of you.
Thank
Thanks.
you.